It's Happy Times and Places, in which I, Toby Hadoke, try to guess my special guests' favourite things about the Doctor Who story they've chosen.
Hello, my name's Daragh Carville. I'm a playwright and screenwriter. I'm the creator of the ITV crime drama The Bay. And the Doctor Who story I'd like Toby to look at is Kinda.
Well, welcome everybody to the dark places of the inside of my house. Daragh Carville, writer of ITV's hit, The Bay. I tell you what, you may be pretty low rent with the host of this podcast, but the guests are A-list. So thanks to Daragh for doing this and for choosing Kinda, which I'm now watching on Blu-ray, because I remembered halfway through watching episode 1 that I could put my DVD away. So I'm going to go to episode selection, part 2. This is going to be the first time, because I have this Blu-ray box set, but I've watched the extras, but I haven't watched the episodes in question. I wanted to save them for a special occasion. So here we are, my first time of watching the Blu-ray of Kinda part 2. And I am going to press play in 3, 2, 1. There we go. It's made a grinding noise. Wheezing, groaning noise made by my Blu-ray player. And here we are, part 2 of Kinda. Daragh chose the fact that it's from the companion's point of view for part 1, so I can see when I choose that performance or that scene, he might be going a little bit further under the surface, or a little bit more from an intellectual standpoint, which I like. I mean, I have to say, one of the joys of this podcast is to see how everybody's love for Doctor Who exhibits itself in a different way. Christopher Bailey, the writer of this, was for years a sort of mystery man, and he still hasn't done an awful lot. I don't think he's done many conventions or anything, and I know Doctor Who magazine had to work hard to track him down for interviews, and they got him for these DVDs, where he reminds me actually a bit of, in the way that he speaks, of Peter Harness, who wrote Kill the Moon and various other new series episodes, who's a fine writer and another interesting man and a great mind. But yeah, they have similar mouths and ways of expressing themselves. So here we are, and the TSS machine music was on Doctor Who the Music Volume 2, which was my disco album of choice. It's the only album I had. Mary Morris, what a fabulous face she has, and physicality, and a wonderful voice. Isn't she an extraordinary actress? And she looks fabulous, and she sounds brilliant, and she does the blind acting extremely well. And I believe lived in Switzerland and had built her own house there, and drove in a knackered old Land Rover to come and do Doctor Who. Bless her. And she's brilliant in The Prisoner. She's the number 2 in The Dance of Death, where she has a wonderful mocking feline quality. She's in A for Andromeda, but she's a magnificent actress, and I think a rather wonderful, charismatic, sapphic, wiry cat lady. Yeah, I love it. I bet she was great, but also terribly terrifying. But she's wonderful in this. And these sorts of mystical parts can be either very, very boring or boring, tedious, sometimes very yawnable, or just really sincere. But she pitches it absolutely brilliantly. And then you've got, I mean, even where the casting is not 100% successful, but I don't know if that's the case with Adrian Mills, or if we impose that upon him afterwards. I remember Aris being perfectly convincing at the time, but he's Adrian Mills. He's the sort of person you expect to see fronting a Portaloo infomercial. because went on to be a presenter of That's Life, where I remember them showing the clip from episode 4 of this with the snake and everyone laughing and it upsetting my teenage self. But even he, as some of the extras do as well, went on to greater things. In fact, every single member of the cast and some of the uncredited cast has something, has done something outside of this that's remarkable, with the exception, I'd say, of poor old Sarah Prince as Karuna there, who is excellent, and I think who would have definitely deserved to do more. Now, I'm sure, did I teach myself this trick? You can do it where you flick the stick the coin in the folds of your of between your thumb and your forefinger. I could do it with a 5p coin. It thrills children at parties. But I find it's really oddly played, the way that the Doctor now goes, oh, of course, when Adric does that, it's behind your ear thing. But no, because he doesn't go, yes, it's a sleight of hand or anything like that. He's reacting as if, yes, it's behind the ear, or that's definitely how I took it as a younger viewer. And I never liked the suggestion of magic within Doctor Who. So it's oddly played, and I think in a story that is mysterious enough as it is, Nerys Hughes is fantastic, isn't she? Cool, intelligent, everything's plausible in her hands. She plays it with absolute sincerity, straightforwardness. I totally buy her as a scientist, and I love her relationship with Davison, and the little bits of twinkle that she gives as well. So she's very serious and plausible, but she, as an actress, she has a lightness of touch that just keeps it, that sprinkles it with wit. But it's sincere wit. There's never any suggestion that it's not being taken seriously. But she is a witty person. These pith helmets are great. They obviously, suggest the British Empire thing going on there, which, there are interesting things to be said about that, and I quite like it being spoofed in that sort of slightly ripe Richard Todd sort of thing than the sort of very po-faced Prime Directive business you sometimes get. Although that's still saying very interesting things. I think there's an element of satire in the way that this is done, and the idea that what does Sandra say, if they're so clever, why didn't they build their spaceship and come and colonize us? Which is the sort of bullying logic of the oppressor. And of course, they are so clever, but they're so clever they've learnt that, building space, you can go as far away as you like, but you don't sort out the problems in here. You can do all the technological advancements and all the exploring way out there that you like, but actually to get real happiness and to get real to find real paradise, you need to clear up what's going on in there. And I remember this. I remember this video effect. I was at my grandparents' when I watched this, I seem to recall. Because I remember saying to my granddad, oh, you know her about Tegan. And I was going to say, her, she is Australian. My granddad went, no, but I know her. And pointed at Nerys Hughes. So Nerys Hughes was well known in my household and my extended household. And that's the I think the other interesting thing. This is so relevant for our child. The very interesting thing of that Hindle is obviously bullied and fragile and in need of help, and he's given power and he's given authority. And he abuses it, and he becomes a despot, and he becomes dangerous. And I think that speaks to our time, because I think we like to think, if somebody is a victim, treat them well, give them, stop them being the oppressed, and they will behave nicely. Except, of course, we all have despots within us, even those of us who have at times felt in a minority or felt bullied or felt like we don't have a voice, who's to say we wouldn't be just as bad as the people that have been awful to us? And often for very good reasons. You know, his reasons are that he is broken and he is trying to control the chaos, and to do it according to the manual. And yeah, he wants to. He's worried about the things. It's so brilliantly done, actually. The idea that he sees the jungle as a sort of threat, and it's a rendition of the sort of overgrowth of his mind, all the tendrils wrapping around his brain, and he does it so well, and they deal with him very well too, and he's the way that he does all of this stuff. I really like this because it's not got the rantiness to it, which, as I say, is important in establishing he's dangerous. But I like the way that he's got this tenuous grip of command, and he thinks he's absolutely what he's doing is absolutely normal, and he's actually rather sad, and it's such a great. It's one of the great performances in Doctor Who, and I think it's certainly the most convincing, unstable base commander, of which there have been many. I think this is a cut above all of them. And he's the threat at the moment. He's the story. We don't really know what's going on with Tegan, and we don't know what the Kinder are all about. The immediate danger to the Doctor is a madman without a box. Davison treats it with exactly the right level of sort of tentative nervousness and trying to understand. And as I say, this is about mental health, isn't it? This is about, and what's about to happen to Sanders, who stays in the end. Spoilers, and that everybody needs a sort of reset, and I see that now. I see that in the world. There are a lot of people. And I've sort of used this lockdown. I often say I have wasps in my head, and I used to drink quite heavily in order to stop the wasps buzzing. But of course, then you wake up, and the groggy wasps start to wake up again, and they're groggy, and so instead of they start to sting you because they're really annoyed, and it starts the circle again. And I think this idea of a the box that clears your head, that sucks the wasps out, or stops the noise, and I find with modern life, I think that's something we could all do with a little bit of a sort of reset, which is what the box of jhana is, really, isn't it? It's the one that has those people, the Kinder, beckoning you towards a simpler life of being more in touch with nature, and rather than all the sort of technology and the special protective dome and the manuals and the rule books that we surround ourselves with to make sense of our lives. Actually, they're all things that give us obligations, and that give us protocols, and that give us straitjackets that actually don't help to stop, give any clarity upstairs. Really, what gives you clarity is nature, is not the emergency rations. It's the apple. It's the fruit from the land. It's the fresh air. It's the communing with nature. And I think this is as relevant now, where mental health is, very much at the forefront. And I know a lot of teenagers. I've got two boys, 16 and 20, and for young people, mental health issues are very, very, very tricky. And what's going on in their heads is sort of a battle for control and dominance, rather like what's going on here with with Tegan. And obviously this is done, very much, a lot of this is sort of tricks of the mind, and there's an obvious evil guy, and a pull between good and evil, but what it's saying is the danger is not, because it's a Buddhist parable, isn't it? And in Buddhism there are no evil baddie monsters. The evil is a manifestation of what's inside your own head. The only thing you have to fear is fear itself, and that the things we do in our mind are the real causes of our own sort of despair, and the Mara is a manifestation of that. And as I get older, I find that more and more compelling, actually, and it's an extraordinarily clever thing for Doctor Who to be taking on. And I know there's talk now that I saw something on a forum, somebody saying, I hope they look at Yaz's mental health issues a bit more in next year's Doctor Who. And so it seems very modern, that's the sort of thing that modern Doctor Who would be very interested in sort of tackling, and a monster as a manifestation of abject mental health is very much a story for our time. So it'd be interesting to see how this would play to a modern audience, because I think it plays with a lot of modern preconceptions and the voices in our heads and the pressures from the outside and the higgledy-piggledy. And we look. Yeah, I mean the jungle. The jungle could almost be, social media creeping in, seeking, seeking. Because we do. I mean, I spend so much time on social. We seek validation, don't we? We seek validation from the very thing that then causes us disquiet. And actually, I know if I went off social media, I would probably have a much better time of it. But social media, with every like, with every retweet, with every reply from somebody whose work I admire, or somebody who's liked something I've done, gives me the validation that I seek. But of course, those things actually do not actually, they're snakes. They do not give us what we want. They actually they feed the beast, but it's a beast that's never satisfied. I think that's fair comment. Or am I disappearing up my own fundament? I hope not. I'm just I hadn't thought about this until until watching this now, that those things have struck me. And I think it's because I think it's rather brave decision to examine the real ramifications of mental health, because when I was a boy I was beaten every day. Now you see, that seems such an old-fashioned thing and so obviously daft. When I was a boy I was beaten every day, and you'd hear people from my grandparents' generation say it. But now I find myself as a parent going, why don't they should sort themselves out? We shouldn't indulge some of the sort of modern fragilities. But that's probably the current equivalent of that. So I'm doing exactly the circle, the wheel turns, and I make the same mistakes, but with different parameters. But it's the same arguments, probably, as that generation made, because we don't understand that the problems besetting people 20, 25 years younger than us, because we don't. But it's almost like we're wanting to legalize revenge, isn't it? Just because we had to put up with certain things that we now look at as being cruel and unfair, think, why shouldn't the next generation? Well, is that to do them any good? Or is it just because we did that we want them to as well? Wheel turns. But of course, yes, This is a lovely reveal. As I say, it loses something slightly. Oh, you can see a camera. Look to the right. You can. That's a BBC camera on a trolley, in the bottom corner there. And this is a lovely transformation. Richard Todd, I know, had wanted to play this for comedy. There was a big thick old tome called Doctor Who: The Unfolding Text, and it was advertised in Doctor Who magazine for an absolute fortune. So I could never buy it. And then I found it in a university library years later, and I didn't realise it's a huge academic book with footnotes and all sorts of stuff and very highfalutin concepts and words. But they look at the production of Kinder a little bit, and I'm sure they spoke to Todd in that, and he'd expected to because Doctor Who in, say, season 17 had been very, high comedy, and the guest stars had fun by chewing the scenery. I think he'd expected to come in and do a sort of slightly comedic turn. And then he got confronted with the quite terse and very serious director, Peter Grimwade, who's a brilliant director, but not necessarily, I think, the most... He gets good performances, though, but I don't think the most touchy-feely with the actors. But I think still, no, you have to play it completely seriously. Although, as I said, it's still a bit of a type. But it works. It's pitched right. But you could see how he might have played it as a sort of huge, slightly OTT caricature. See, the levels in this jungle set are pretty good. The raised bits and the painted backdrop has enough in front of it that it doesn't look pony, and the perspective is decent on it. And of course, Eve is throwing apples at Adam in the Garden of Eden. Lovely bit of symbolism, and it's interesting. I was wondering if one of the things I would choose would be Janet Fielding, because she gets to do something so different. But then I remember the last time I saw this, actually Evil Tegan is only in about a scene and a half, and I seem to recall, seeing as this is one of the stories that's described as Tegan's best, I've got a feeling in episode 3 there's one shot of her lying on the ground, and that's it. She gets her ep fee for that. She says, I always have a thing about ep fees, where if an actor dies in an American series, but they're back next week as a corpse, so that somebody can say, I'm sorry, John, I'm gonna avenge you. I always go, oh, that's nice, ep fee, because you have to get paid by the episode. But she does do a good job here, and I believe she'd wanted to be a bit more sort of sensual and tempting. It's all about the temptation. That's what forbidden fruit is, isn't it? And in the dark place of her mind, Ducker is tempting her. Although it's I mean, I think you could have longer and more intricate and more morally testing dream sequences now, where perhaps Tegan, rather than, I mean, she agrees to Ducker in this because he basically bullies and tricks her into it, whereas I wonder if a slight element of temptation might have made her a bit more complicit in her crossing over to the dark side. You might be slightly more morally complex now. That's not a criticism. That's just an observation now. She's great here, and that. And yes, and I remember all it, and yeah, that sort of cutting there. Although Aris, for somebody who has lives is a product of nature and who lives off the land, he's got a lot of fillings. Again, the last time I watched this, one of the main things I came away with was Adrian Mills has got a lot of fillings. But yes, and they do that simple trick with the red mouthwash or whatever, and he actually does a decent job. I feel a bit for Adrian Mills. I think perhaps because he has another association for me as the slightly cheesy That's Life presenter, and they were supposed to be slightly cheesy. I'm not being pejorative of him at all, and he seems like a lovely chap every time I've seen him interviewed. But because he's got the slightly cheesy TV presenter vibe going on, so I'd be interested to see what listeners think of Adrian Mills' performance if they don't know him from anything else. Now we're coming to the end of the episode, and I've got to choose something. I mean, it all comes back to Simon Rouse, but I have chosen the cast, so I don't think I can specifically choose Simon Rouse. I love this cliffhanger though, and the way that the camera keeps going slightly further and further in. Grimway's use of the camera is absolutely fantastic, and this cliffhanger is superb. Look at that, and it doesn't cheat next week either. And the way that built to a climax was absolutely superb. Oh, it's a difficult one to choose. What will be my thing? I mean, Janet Fielding does deserve a nod for her work, even though it is only really, it's that one scene really where she, but it's nice to get to see a companion actor display their chops, as it were. But now I know we're not going to have another dream sequence. And although I think the ones in episode 1 are, well, there are more of them, I do think it has to be applauded, because of its ambition in trying to, that threat it depicts in those dream sequences is not a literal threat. It's doing something totally different, and they're very well staged, and they're lit well, and they're, I mean, I remember them at the time, even though, as I say, I didn't necessarily particularly grasp what was going on. And I think for what they represent, as I said earlier, I think they would perhaps be now a bit more, have more morally grey areas in the interaction, and perhaps, Tegan would be a bit more complicit in her own downfall. And she would perhaps be tempted by something. But I think because there's nothing much like them in the classic series, not even in Snake Dance, which, is the sister production to this, that's still much more literal. I think I think I have to say the dream sequences, just because I think they're a brave attempt at doing something different, and I think they're largely pulled off. So that's my choice for episode 2. What's Daragh going to choose?
And that line, the dark places of the inside, brings me to another of the things I love about this story, which is its language. It's full of these lines of dialogue that glint like jewels. So I'd like to pick out a few of those. In episode 2, when the Mara first possesses the Kinda Aris and he's given voice for the first time, the first thing he says is, "All things are possible." And that's a line that stuck in my head in 1982, and it's been there ever since. There are these lines from this show that I kind of turn over in my head all the time, like earworms. There's another one in episode 3.
Okay. Well, I think that's him leading us into episode 3, so I can't hear the rest of that. Or it'll be an earworm playing for me as I watch it, and it will give away his choice for episode 3. So his choice for episode 2 is the language. And there are some great lines in there. I'd sort of got in the back of my head that some of the language for episode 3, but he's thrown forward to that whilst choosing it as his thing for episode 2, which is very clever of him. All things are possible, except for me, I think, to get any of the things my guest is going to choose about Kinder. But it's an interesting journey, and he's being very insightful. And I'm finding this, I'm now full of regret that I think I went off on one about mental health rather than talking about the specifics of a Doctor Who story. But that's because even when you do something that's supposed to be light and disposable and entertaining like this, I then go to bed and I replay over and over the things I wish I'd said and the things I wish I hadn't said. And it's almost like the dark places of my inside are manifesting themselves in a horrible snake-like way. Who would have thunk it? Well, there we go. That's what I thought of Kinder Part 2, and that's all this is supposed to be. And so that was that on this particular occasion. So I don't know if that was what you wanted, but it's what you got. If you didn't like it, you can, next time I walk past you and you're sitting up a tree, you can throw apples at me. But in the meantime, I hope you're very well, and the wheel will turn, and we will reconvene for episode 3 in the next edition of this. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Ta-ta.
I think you'll find. I think you'll find. I think you'll find.
I think you'll find.
Well, it has been pointed out to me that I think we'll all find that the album I refer to that has the TSS machine music on is just Doctor Who The Music, Volume 1, not Volume 2. Where I got Volume 2 from, I've no idea, because I never got Volume 2. I only ever had Volume 1. Oh, the memory cheats. Also, I don't mention in this entire commentary, nor in the next 2 episodes, so don't wait for it, the whole malarkey about the rumours going around that it was Kate Bush who wrote Kinder, because nobody ever found Christopher Bailey till many, many years later, and there's various bits of symbolism that reminded people of Kate Bush's work. You'd have thought that would have killed 5 minutes, but then again, I don't really talk much about colonialism either, so you get what you pay for in this, and sometimes you don't. Anyway, Doctor Who The Music Volume 1 is the record to which I refer, and not Doctor Who The Music Volume 2, or indeed The Hounds of Love, or Cloudbusting, or The Best of Kate Bush, and all those other records. Bye. It's very kind of you to listen to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke. My special guest this time around is Daragh Carville. And this episode's featured patrons, to whom thanks are due, are Ruben Herfindahl, Rob Leonard, Stephen Moffat, Richard Straw, Jessica Jones, Andrew Jordan, James Lark, David Matthewman, Rossa McPhillips, Stuart Mitchell, Nathan Moore, Melvin Pena, Keith Pirrie, Dylan Rees, John Rivers, Keith Say, Len Stewart, Nick Temple, Reynard Toombs, Apollo C. Vermouth, Gary Wales, Adam Westwood, Rich Wiggins, Michael Williams, and Stephen White. The music is by Dave Gates, and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you'd like to join that list of names and to get early releases and exclusive material, please subscribe at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. If you can't do that, and that's perfectly understandable in these times of financial dire straits, you could rate and review these very highly wherever you can, because that costs you absolutely nothing, and it does me a favour. So thanks in advance for that, but also thanks for listening. One-off payments are also possible at Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke if you want to give me a caffeinated beverage in financial form anytime you're feeling so inclined. But mostly, thanks for listening, and please do spread the word if you can. Thanks ever so much. Don't forget to subscribe to the official Toby Hadoke YouTube channel. And you can also follow my comedy night, Excess Malarkey, on twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey. It's at 8 p.m. every Tuesday, that's GMT, but there's also an archive and selected clips, and it's basically me introducing guests from the comedy circuit.